We're going to get started with a little bit of like fun goofball writing. We're going to do a writing warm up. I want you to think of one of your characters. It could be any of your characters. And remember, this is a side writing moment, but you are describing how this other person moves or talks through your character's voice, your protagonist's voice. So if you're writing a memoir, then this is younger you looking at your dad or your mom or the teacher or the mean bully or whoever it was. Okay. And if it's your protagonist, they're looking at someone in the scene. Okay. And you might not put it in, but it's just a little bit of loosening up of those creative juices. Okay. So 3 minutes. Let's give that a try. And it's like your side writing, which you might insert. And if you want to just start your scene that way, you can. The focus is on getting your main character's voice as they describe someone else. Okay, everyone, little bit of warm up. I want you to just relax, start imagining your story. And that's true even if you're writing a memoir. For those of you who are writing nonfiction books in which you're going to be illustrating it with stories, each story you're going to have to kind of dive into the scene. In the same way, everyone has to dive in when they're writing any chapter. All right. So what we're going to work on today, the focus is going to be a little bit of dialogue, a little bit of voice, a little bit of character development so that your writing is richer. And that's true no matter what you're writing. You want to really get into the depth of the character because that's what we're going to care about. We care about character, right? We're going to have to care about your protagonist most of all. We're going to have to connect to them. So there's lots of ways you can do that. And we're going to look at All Fours by Miranda July. This was a National Book Award finalist, and I really loved it. So I wanted to talk about it. I think the voice of this character is amazing. And if you're interested in, it's about an artist woman who's going through menopause and decides to go on a trip across the country to kind of grow and learn. And she doesn't end up making it. She gets stopped very, very early. And it's just hilarious and rich in terms of character development. Even if it's not your kind of book, it doesn't matter what book you're writing. If you're writing for kids, you're writing for adults, you want that level of character development. So I have a few different books that I'm going to show you examples from that are very different in terms of voice. If you're writing a memoir, you got to get into your narrative voice, little bit of humor, a little bit of, your spiciness, whatever it is. Okay. And so same with your characters. You want to make sure that you're showing that they are imperfect, and then the reader is going to connect to them. Okay, so look at this beginning. Sorry to trouble you was how the note began, which is such a great opener. Please trouble me, trouble me. I've been waiting my whole life to be troubled by a note like this. So right away we get pulled in, and I think it's the character voice that pulls us in because we're like, what? She wants this note about being troubled. I'm interested. So that's your goal with voice. Are you going to make the reader interested, and are they going to laugh a little, or are they going to be curious by that voice? So that's what you want to really look at. And I think it does here. And it's an interesting sort of different way to start a book. So you want to write a hook, and you can start your chapters wherever you are with voice and personality. You can make us curious or make us laugh. Okay. So right now, I'm going to pause. I'm going to give you 1 minute to write a single line hook that would give the voice of your main character. If you're writing short stories, same thing, some voicey opening. Go ahead. Was that hard? What do you think? Comments in the chat? Anybody want to share? We're going to continue on, and I would love you to read this, and I want you to consider, is your character a driver or a parker? What is their life philosophy? What do they argue about with their friends or their family? So that's all addressed here. And this is in the first chapter. We learn a lot. Her partner, the main character's partner, is the person talking. Well, in life, there are parkers and there are drivers, he began. Drivers are able to maintain awareness and engagement, even when life is boring. They don't need applause for every little thing. They get joy from petting a dog or hanging out with their kid, and that's enough. This kind of person can do cross-country drives. He took a sip of his drink. Dogs were a hot button topic for us. Harris and Sam wanted one. I was ambivalent about pets in general. Are we totally sure about the domestication of animals? Will we not look back on this as a kind of slavery? But how to get out of it now when the world is so populated with dogs and cats that can't fend for themselves? It's not humane to just release them. It would have to be a group decision. No more pets after this. This is the last round of them. But that was never going to happen, even if everyone agreed with me, and literally no one did. Being anti-pet, pro-animal was one of my least winning qualities. Parker's, on the other hand, and he looked at me, need a discrete task that seems impossible, something that takes every bit of focus and for which they might receive applause. Bravo, someone might say after they fit the car into an especially tight spot. Amazing. The rest of the time, they're bored and fundamentally he looked at the ceiling trying to think of the right word, disappointed. A Parker can't drive across the country, but Parkers are good in emergencies, he added. They like to save the day. I'm definitely a Parker, said Sonia's husband. I love to save the day. Okay, so how about your character? How about you? Are you a parker or a driver? Interesting, right? And do you see this whole section where she's thinking before her partner goes on? This is all voice. These are weird things about her a little bit. How are you sharing your character's weirdness? And this is a book for weirdness. Believe me, if you want a book that really digs into the core brutal humanity of a character, the things we would be embarrassed to say, this is the book. So if you're looking to get a bit more raw in your writing, a little bit more vulnerable, because vulnerability of a character is where we start to love them. We say, oh, I feel unworthy too. I feel shitty about myself. Let me keep reading this book, right? So we all have moments of insecurity and fear and frailty, and we have moments of brilliance and bravery and feeling great about ourselves. So that's humanity. And it's even interesting if a character's like, I feel great all the time. Listen, when they're alone, they don't feel great. Something's wrong with them. They know when they're alone with themselves, right? So what about your character? So think about that, write that down. Is your character a driver or a parker? Is their life philosophy? Do you give that a moment? Do you write about that at any point? And what do they argue about with their family or their friends? So that's important. What did they disagree with their friends? Would they dare to disagree about anything with their friends? So are they the get along person? Okay. All right. Love that. Okay. Let's think about theme stated because that's going to happen pretty early in your book. So theme stated is sort of what you're trying to say in your book, and your character doesn't get it yet, not at the beginning. So somebody says something to them and they're like, yeah, whatever. That's very common. And so it can be a really great way to kind of give a little hello to the theme. Just a tiny little something. So in this case, we have dialogue here, and the main character is here, and this character is her best friend, Jordy. And Jordy, like the main characters, decide to drive across the country, and she is not a driver. She's not a driver. She's gonna be a driver because, you know, she's determined to prove her partner wrong, and also she feels like she could grow. And then her best friend says this. You know, you could just fly if you want, she said. Are you saying that because you think I'll crash? No, 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 not at all. It's just that if you don't transform, that's fine too. I stare at her in the half light, and she looked straight back at me. I'm just making it hard for myself, aren't I? Maybe. The reason why this is a theme stated moment is that in the end, this book is ultimately about accepting yourself for all your shit, all your imperfection. You don't have to be better. You just have to love yourself. So that's kind of where the theme stated happens here. And she's like, no, I'm going to go. That is just a little moment. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out. And I also want you just to notice here, just on a grammar level, we have paragraphs every time people talk. You need that. And notice you do not need dialogue tags. Actions are way better than dialogue tags. And said is perfectly fine. If anybody ever told you, don't use said, that was a third grade teacher. And honestly, they weren't a writer, all literary books. This was a National Book Award finalist. It's filled with said. Using all those other things like questioned, replied. I mean, you can use them occasionally, but said is invisible. And so many, many, many literary books have said, and many literary writers, you know, give the advice, do not give a bunch of dialogue tags. And honestly, there is nothing more off-putting than blah, blah, blah. He questioned, blah, blah, blah. She replied, blah, blah, blah. Cut them. Once you start with two people talking, you don't need them. And if you are having more people, then get some actions in there. Then we have something physically to see. Also, they're often repetitive. Get out of here, she yelled. Well, if you have the exclamation mark, we know she yelled. And even worse, get out of here, she yelled angrily. Well, is there any other way to say get out of here than angrily? That is angrily. So avoid your adverbs too. It's a way to weaken the writing. Much better use some kind of action, and you put it in the same paragraph as they're talking. So the next thing I want you to think about are your characters and their actions and their reactions. This is where the magic happens. How do your characters react to everything that happens? How do they respond when someone says something? How do they respond to scary things? Do they fight? Do they freeze? Do they run? Do they ignore? And that is all based on their past. Are they getting triggered? And also based on their strengths and weaknesses, right? So we all have a past, and so do your characters. And that past is going to determine how they act, how they respond to everything, okay? So we really want to consider that. This book, Refugee, is a book, I like to give you guys a range so that you don't just think, oh, well, that's that book. No, it's all books, memoirs, short stories, adult books, kids' books. So we start with some onomatopoeia, which is just sound words. Only do sound words if they're mysterious. Don't do ding dong. The doorbell ringing is not a good, it's weak. Okay, but this is good because we don't know what's happening. It's mysterious. All right, and then we have this kid getting woken up and he's reacting. He pauses. Now, some people are going to run. Some people are going to hide immediately. He just sort of stops. That's based on him. Okay, so it's just your characters. Whatever happens, someone says something, they're going to respond. Someone does something, they're going to respond. And it's in how they respond that we will create that connection to them, being like, oh, I would do that too. Or, oh, that's not a good plan. Or whatever. It pulls us in. If you don't show their reactions, we're disengaged because it's not normal. Everybody reacts to stuff. So, and we all react differently. Okay. So he kind of reacts and then he's like, okay, it's fine. It's probably nothing. So he's like that. And I will say, it's kind of funny. My husband's the same way. He's always like, oh, it's nothing. And, we did actually have a break in. And I was like, went upstairs and I was like, gosh, it's kind of weird. I think I have this feeling that someone was in our house. There's like the windows open and there was snow on I don't remember leaving the window open. So I ran downstairs and I woke him up and I said, I think someone's been in our house. And he's like, there's nobody. I said, but the window's open. We probably left it open. And then he rolled over. And it turned out people had been in our house. They'd stolen stuff while we were sleeping. But my instinct, if someone did that to me, I'd be like, like it would be like a full, fire alarm. So we all react in different ways. You got to just think, how do your characters react? And that we have to really show that. Okay. Elmer Leonard, good example in Get Shorty. Someone steals their coat. I want you to think of your main character right now. They go to a cafe. Someone steals their coat. And the staff know. They know who took it. They know. And they're acting like it's no big deal. He's a good guy. How are you going to react? Are you going to be infuriated? Or are you going to be like, okay, cool. Like, how are you going to act? So this is how this character reacts. And what I want you to notice is the dialogue and how the dialogue shows a lot about the characters. And that's what you want to do for the dialogue. Notice that you have paragraphs. It's a very basic thing, but you do need paragraphs every time someone talks. And then you often have a paragraph for the reaction too. He didn't take it, the waiter said. He borrowed it. See, we get this coat for him and he returned the one he borrowed. Or I think maybe if it's your coat, the waiter said, he gave it to you. He was wearing it, to go home. He wasn't going to keep it. My car keys are in the pocket, Chili said. They both looked at him now, the manager and the waiter, like they didn't understand English. What I'm saying, Chili said, how am I supposed to go get my coat if I don't have the keys to my car? The manager said they call him a taxi. Let me get it straight, Chili said. You aren't responsible for any lost articles like an expensive coat of mine, but you're going to find Ray Bones' coat or get him a new one. Is that what you're telling me? Basically, he saw they weren't telling him shit other than Ray Bones was a good customer who came in 2-3 times a week and worked for Jimmy Cab. Okay, so we get that kind of tough guy voice in the actual dialogue and in the voice in all this part, right here, in here, in the reactions. So we have thought reactions and we have physical reactions, right? So we want to see both. We need to see how other characters are reacting in their body language and also how your main character is reacting in their thoughts. Okay, so you need to know this about your character. What would they do? How would they respond? Are they like, it's fine, no big deal? Or would they be like, no, I need my coat right now? Different reactions, right? I want you to try to get your character to describe someone through their actions. So we learn a lot about we learn a lot about the character viewing the person and the other person. So this is how this book starts, and it's a really good hook. But this is what you could do at the beginning of any chapter. The match snapped, then sizzled, and I woke up fast. I heard my mother inhale as she took a long pull on a cigarette. So that's characterization, a type of character who really sucks in that cigarette. Her lips stuck on the filter, so I knew she was still wearing lipstick. She'd been up all night. Okay? All right. Okay, so I'll give you those things to work on in 15 minutes, but mostly we're just get into that rawness, into the very core of your character, just for these 15 minutes. And then I'll come back for 5 minutes, answer questions, and then we'll do another longer 30-minute write. Okay? All right, let's give it a try.